By the way, this is another way I know whether or not people know what they're talking about. The people who know the most about it are the scaredest.
Yeah.
They're the ones. So if you're like a junior level code guy and you just like reading stuff in like Popular Mechanics about it, you just. But if you're like Jeffrey Hinton or someone like Mo Gawdat or Mustafa Suleiman, these are the guys who are the fathers of AI. They're all writing books saying, watch out. And I've read all their books.
Welcome to the Plain Speech Podcast. My name is Michael Clary. My guest today is Pastor C.R. Wiley, or Chris Wiley. And Chris has been around long enough to see huge developments in technology, but he also has the pastoral wisdom to provide guidance in the wise use of it. I think we're going to be really helped by this conversation, and I've been looking forward to talking to him and learning from his wisdom about technology and how it intersects with the Christian household and things like this. Looking forward to this for a long time. Before I get to the interview, though, I wanted to let you know about our conference coming up that Chris is going to be speaking at. The conference is the King's Domain Conference. The theme is Future-Proof Christianity, and it's coming up this May 8th through 10 in Cincinnati, Ohio. And Chris is going to be one of our keynote speakers. The conference aims to answer one simple question. What do Christians need to do now to prepare for the next 20 years? And I wanted to answer this question because the last 20 years have been a bit of a disaster for Christians. We have not handled the challenges we faced in the last 20 years very well. So we want to be better prepared for the 20 coming, the next 20 years. And I invited Chris to come and speak because he has the things that I care a lot about and am interested in. There's a lot of overlap between what I care about and what Chris is interested in, what he has expertise in, particularly the Christian household. And I trust his instincts also on the use of technology. He's written a lot about this, and he's somebody we definitely trust and I want to listen to. So I want to personally invite you to come and be a part of this conference. Again, May 8th through 10 in Cincinnati, Ohio. And sneaking in a little bonus here, if you use the promo code PSP when you register, you'll get $10 off the ticket price. The cost is only $120, so there's really no greater value for the money with this speaker lineup you're going to find anywhere. But you get another $10 off, and when you're here, you'll get to hear from other future-proof speakers. We have guys like Jeff Durbin, who's going to be there, Tom Askell, Joe Rigney, Michael Foster, David Schrock, and myself. I think I've mentioned everybody. Yeah, I think it's all of them. So I hope to see you there. Go to futureproofchristianity.com, futureproofchristianity.com to register. Register today. It helps if you get registered ahead of time so we can prepare. And that's it. On to the interview. Hope you enjoy this. Well, Chris, I asked Grok what questions I should ask you, and Grok told me not to trust anything that you had to say about the dangers of AI. So I suppose we can proceed at our own risk. But
So Grok knows about me, huh? Okay.
Evidently, your name is out there. So I wonder if we could just start. I'd like to talk to you about Christians and understanding rapid technological change that's some of it is here, some of it is right around the corner, and it shows no sign of slowing down. So I wonder if we could just start more at a fundamental level. If you could tell us, how would you define AI? What is AI?
Okay, well, if we want to just focus on that, artificial intelligence is a project that's been underway for quite a while, and there have been periods where the progress was very slow, if not non-existent. But with the development of some approaches to the project in the last, say, 20 years, it's really come to a level that is right out of science fiction. So what you had with a fellow by the name of Jeffrey Hinton, who is really considered the godfather of AI. He was actually a brain researcher and went from that field into software and technological sort of approaches to artificial intelligence, and he created an approach uh, called neural networks, which mimics the human mind, or the human brain, I should say.
Hmm.
So the technology is based on human biology. It's obviously a silicon, and kind of analogical, kind of dynamic, where um, it's obviously not the exact same thing, and it doesn't work exactly the same way, but it has the potential to learn, and it does, and that's the thing that is the breakthrough. So you have something now that we didn't have before, and it's completely new, utterly different. So when people talk about, say, technological advances in the past and the development of new tools, they're really not getting what happened. The comparison to, say, something like the mechanical loom is just kind of laughable. We're talking about a technology that's a general purpose technology that can be used for all sorts of things, and really has the power to outsmart us, and it already has in certain areas. So artificial intelligence at the moment is what we refer to as narrow AI, sort of task-oriented artificial intelligence. You give the uh, the chat bot or whatever you're working with some training, and then it recursively improved. So it's not like old-fashioned software where garbage in, garbage out. It's the result of the human code writing and that kind of stuff. It's not that. That's not the way it works. And you give it a task, and it iteratively learns, and then exponentially learns until it far exceeds human abilities. So, for example, like um, AlphaGo, which was the artificial intelligence that won the Go championship and just kind of blew the entire Orient out of the water, because that's like a big deal in the East, in places like Korea and China and Japan. That's an ancient uh, table game that no one ever thought, could be mastered by software, unlike chess, which is still a very complicated but a Western game. And it just destroyed everybody. And it did it in a pretty short amount of time, and it's done that with everything it's been given. So narrow AI is pretty great. I'm a supporter of it, but the next level of artificial intelligence is referred to as AGI, artificial general intelligence, and that's kind of the holy grail. That's the stuff of Skynet and the Matrix. It's basically general intelligence across multiple domains, and can operate with agency across domains. This is another thing people don't get. You don't really need some human being in a room behind a curtain pulling levers. Uh, Artificial intelligence exercises agency and creativity. So one of the ways I know whether or not somebody understands the technology is whether or not they say something goofy like it's just a tool. When someone says that, I say, you just don't get it. It's not just a tool. This really is a game changer. It's general purpose technology like fire or the wheel. It has an infinite number of applications, and it can be used to replace people. So I was just with one of my elders last night who had a software company, and they're starting to feel the heat. The people in tech are being replaced at a kind of scary clip. But the software company that he was part owner in is really kind of coming apart, and so he's not there anymore. And he told me yesterday that he is working with AI agents, and he said it's like I've got a staff of 5 very competent coders right now, and they're all AI.
Wow. That this stuff it just is so terrifying. And
Right.
and when I say
But
that, I'm like,
by the way, this is another way I know whether or not people know what they're talking about. The people who know the most about it are the scaredest.
yeah.
They're the ones. So if you're like a junior level code guy and you just like reading stuff in like Popular Mechanics about it, you just. But if you're like Jeffrey Hinton or someone like Mo Gawdat or Mustafa Suleiman. These are the guys who are the fathers of AI. They're all writing books saying, watch out. And I've
Yeah.
read all their books.
So rather than telling you what I fear, you are more educated on this. Can you tell me what are the legitimate fears that at least should be acknowledged?
Well, I think there are four. So they're all theologically grounded, basically things that I think are important for human beings because we've been created to be a certain kind of creature and serve a certain role in the created order. So the the three most obvious, I think, matters have to do with vocation, dominion, and idolatry. Those are the three, I think, theological threats. So basically, particularly as Reformed, you know, uh, pastors, one of the things we talk to people about all the time with regard to the Reformed outlook on vocation is everybody's got a calling. In other words, you through your calling, you serve people and God. Well,
Hmm.
AI is here to say, you're no longer needed. I can do that for you. And we're not talking about, like I said, mechanical looms. We're talking about management. We're talking about people who can actually run companies and stuff like that. In fact, some of the people who are, in fact, I just came across something just today. I've got a friend who's a really high-powered lawyer. He's actually at my church, and he's on a first-name basis with Supreme Court justices. So he's pretty serious. He said the law profession is done. It's
Wow.
over. And so in fact, I just saw something today where somebody had an AI lawyer representing him in court, and the judge threw it out. But the point, is that you could actually have the audacity, to try that. It save a lot of money. You say, hey, this AI lawyer knows as much as any lawyer in this room,
Yeah.
and he's it or whatever is what I'm going to rely on for my defense. And you know, now maybe the judge is just chauvinistic, prejudiced against artificial intelligence. That's one of the ways that advocates for artificial intelligence kind of try to shame people out of using it or out of being afraid of it or whatever. They'll say, "Oh, you're just chauvinistic. You're a speciesist." I've literally come across this and everything. You think that human beings are like the only intelligent creatures in the world? Well, you need to get over this. So there's the vocational thing, but then there's, closely related to that is dominion. Do we just hand over everything to the machines? And
Hmm.
then idolatry. Do we believe that the machines can save us? The machine's going to be our salvation? And a lot of people think so. A lot of people are turning to the machines, not just for solving things like, climate change, but even for immortality. So there's a belief that the machines, if we can find a way to biologically connect ourselves to them, will make us supermen, and we'll be able to infinitely upgrade ourselves. This is what transhumanism is about. So those are the threats that I think are, you know, general in character. But I think there's one that's a pedagogical threat, and we've discovered or we've proven that it's actually the case. Over reliance on AI makes you dumb, and
Yeah.
studies are coming in that the term that's used is cognitive offloading. The more you offload onto AI, the more like Bertie Wooster you become.
Hmm.
Literally just someone that has to be cared for all the time
Yeah.
and entertained and saved. So basically, if we let AI run amok, we could end up with idiocracy, just a lot of stupid people.
Yeah. There's a book, Nicholas Carr. I can't remember the title of the book, but the book was about technology, but it was probably 10 years ago um, that it came out. But just the simple point that he made is what you're saying there. Just whatever function a tool can enhance, that a human can naturally do, but the tool can enhance it, then the human ability to do that diminishes.
Hmm.
And that's a very obviously true statement. And you mentioned just AI kind of infiltrating everywhere. I had a doctor appointment yesterday, just a regular checkup, and the doctor, she's very sweet, very relatable woman, and she walks out and comes back. She said, "Well, hold on, I need to get my AI thing to do this next part." And I was like, "What are you going to wheel a robot into the room? Like, what are you about to do?" But
Yeah.
and it's a very simple thing. But I saw what she did. I'm like, okay, this is an infant version of what certainly is sure to come, and you don't have to be all that creative to imagine a future dominated by this. She put her phone on the countertop, and she would just ask me questions. She go, "Any changes in your health? Do you have any pain, this or that, anxiety, depression?" And she said, and then she explained this. It's an AI will record it on her phone, and then it will fill in the various populate the fields in the chart. Um, and I
Yep.
was just like, that's insane. And I'm blown away just by that ability, knowing that where this could go, could replace physicians. I mean, physicians are already kind of automated. I mean, it's
Mhm.
just like, it's not so much, I'm a human doctor, you're a human patient, and I'm going to assess you as a person and give you what I think you need, patient Wiley. Rather, it's just like, okay, here is, it's toggles, do you have this, check that? Okay. The data tells me you need to take this prescription, and that's it. Um, so these things are really frightening. And as you say, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you in particular, Chris, is that I there are things that the possibilities are so daunting, and the remedy seems so unlikely that I'm like, what? I, I feel a little bit, and I imagine other people maybe head in the sand. Just what do we do? Like, what? How can Christians be faithful? So if we just opt out, then do we become the Amish? And would that be a good option? Would that be a wise thing to do? I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I don't think there'll be any opting out. It'll be impossible. So I think that we're on the train and it's going somewhere. Question is, how do we live on the train? So how do we set up our little booth that we're in, and really think in that term. So those terms, but I think that what we're going to be required to do is to establish some limits for AI, and then the question is, how are those limits established? What do the limits include? And so that's really what my book's about. So the book I'm working on is uh, Saint Anthony's Guide to Surviving the AI Apocalypse, and I'm reflecting on different things in terms of spiritual disciplines, sort of household disciplines, these sorts of things that I suspect will be helpful. Um, the proof is in the pudding, as they say. This is stuff that I'm thinking about and trying to imagine, but I'm trying to kind of drill things down to what I think are basic, sort of non-negotiables. So, for example, I think that a kind of neo-Amish option does exist, but you're going to have to figure out um, how to live with AI anyway. So it's that sort of thing. So imagine an AI that kind of operates invisibly and is behind, sort of the wall, so to speak, and is working continuously, but you're not really aware of it on your in a day-to-day way because you are trying to live as an analog existence as best you can. But there's going to need to be some kind of ongoing kind of connection to AI, and so there would have to be somebody or some buddies who are doing that to preserve sort of this space. So that's one option. The other option I've thought about is what I refer to Butlerian Jihad light. And if you're familiar with the Butlerian Jihad from Dune, you're not?
Oh,
Okay.
uh, yeah, I don't know it.
Okay, well, in Dune, you're familiar with Dune, I'm
Hmm.
assuming because of the films. Dune is set in the distant future, but between our time and that time in the backstory of Dune, there was a revolt against AI. It was the Butlerian Jihad, And what it was a really a war to the death between AI. So, like if you think about like the Matrix, the machines win, and Dune, human beings win.
Hmm.
And the secret to the success of the human effort was religion. So you have to have the only thing strong enough to defeat the machines in Frank Herbert's universe is religion, and that's because it can create the conditions that people are willing to sacrifice their lives for. So you know, unless you have that, you're not going to beat the machines. So you got to be willing to die. But this is Butlerian jihad light. I'm not proposing that. But what I'm thinking is that we're going to need to have a set of very strict religious practices that prohibit the use of AI in certain ways, and that is something that will require religious leaders, Christian pastors, and so forth, to reinforce if it's going to work. In other words, you have to be afraid of something like being shunned or excommunicated in order
Yeah.
for you to really take it seriously.
So
Now,
it has to leave the realm of conscience and
right.
into the realm of, for lack of a better word, we're going to be legalistic
Hmm.
to enforce these norms about things that we don't have explicit Bible verses to attach to.
Right. We're going to have to do a little work in terms of building out from a set of biblical convictions, but there's no way, obviously, we can say that everything was anticipated that we'd have to face today. For example, smartphones.
Yeah.
You know, there was no way to anticipate that. And I think that with this stuff, if we really take seriously vocation, pedagogy, dominion, and idolatry, if we really take those things seriously and we say AI is a threat in each of these areas, we must establish boundaries. This is not uh, this is not something that we can leave to just individuals. It's because it's going to have to be a communal effort if it's going to succeed.
Yeah. I have, does your book, do you go into the Butlerian jihad light? Do you go into that
Oh
and
yeah,
like what some of the rules are?
yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to ask you. I want to ask you about that. Maybe before I get there, I want to. Um, can you talk about transhumanism? You mentioned it earlier, but how? What is the relationship between AI, transhumanism, and where these are headed?
Well, transhumanism is distinct insofar as it was a project that different people had in mind before artificial intelligence had this recent breakthrough. But artificial intelligence has kind of given it new life, it kind of inspired it to it in certain ways. And there have been a number of people who have been involved with the transhumanist project. Many of them are technologists, and they're from Silicon Valley. But the most well known is a guy named Ray Kurzweil, and Kurzweil
Kurzweil
was
had the keyboards. Um,
yeah, that's right. Yeah, he
yeah,
was an
I remember
inventor.
those.
Yeah, he's an inventor, and in many respects a decent guy. So you can't like look at him and say he's just all bad or anything. He had a heart for people who were blind and needed help. So he was the guy that invented text to voice software so that the blind could have a machine read stuff to them and stuff like that. And then the keyboard stuff. And he's a musician. He's gifted musically, and he's kind of a sympathetic figure, but kind of weird, kind of creepy as well. But there was a documentary that came out. I don't know how many years ago, maybe 5 to 8 years ago, called Transcendent Man, and it was a documentary about him and his dream to live forever, or at least a really, really long, long, long time. And basically, his conviction is that death is an engineering problem, and if we have the technology, we can defeat it. So, and there are a number of things that, I mean, even biblically, we can say if we take the lengths, sort of the ages that we're told people lived in the early part of Genesis to heart, we say, well, yeah, I mean, this is not like beyond the biblical sort of framework for understanding that people can live hundreds of years. That's what he wants to do, and even more. And the idea is that artificial intelligence will help at a number of levels. One of those levels would be just helping human beings kind of take their intelligence to another level, but some kind of physical brain interface, sort of a neural link. What we see Elon Musk working on. He's actually got a company by that name, but he's not the only person who's working on that.
So is this a step beyond like a cochlear implant, or is that kind of maybe an elementary version of it?
Yeah, but what you're dealing with is sort of steps. So Kurzweil would say, the rate of technological change is only going to increase in speed, so we can anticipate kind of an exponential sort of facility to extend our lives in a variety of ways, everything from using nanobots to go into our bloodstreams and address problems with our biological conditions and stuff like that, like Alzheimer's, going into the brain and actually chewing up and consuming plaque that creates Alzheimer's and things like that, cancer cells or things like that. And this really is within the realm of possibility. I mean, we're not far from being able to do stuff like that. And then a lot of that's because of artificial intelligence. But also stuff related to, like I said, extending our intellectual powers through direct kind of cloud connection. So instead of like even relying on AI, you would be kind of an AI. You would actually have access to the cloud, just thinking. It's crazy stuff, but this is the stuff they talk about.
Yeah, I'm trying to imagine how that would even work. It's all kind of like a cloud storage for your memories, something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. By the way, this is stuff that Philip K. Dick was thinking about in the 70s and 80s. He was the guy behind Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which is the book that Blade Runner is based on.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, so this stuff has been around for quite a while. I just didn't have the tech for it.
Right.
And now the tech is there.
Yep.
So so can you crystal ball look into where things might go, if you're comfortable speculating a bit? The question that I've been asking myself, and just give you a framing for this. I turned 50 years old this past September, and been in ministry for about 20 years. And I'm thinking, if I've got 20 years left, roughly, let's say the Lord gives me till 70, I feel like I certainly have enough gas in the tank to go that long, if I live that long. So I'm right at the hinge point. And I look back on the last 20 years, and I got to think, man, it was kind of a disaster. We missed a lot, but there was a lot of rapid change that we just weren't prepared for, and we were coasting on the goodwill and inertia from Christian generations that went before us. But now I'm like, okay, I want the next 20 years of my ministry I don't want to miss things that I missed the last 20 years. So I'm trying to anticipate the next 20. And that's why I wanted, the conference that we're putting on, and why I wanted to talk
Right.
to you. What should we anticipate in the next 20 years, and how might we, prepare and respond?
Well, I think one of the things we'll need to do is reconcile ourselves to AI as being a permanent feature, and just be willing to sort of work with that, and give it the tasks that we can't do, and just let it do those things, and figure out ways to retain the things that only we should be doing, and create a division of labor that way. I think that's the constructive path forward. I don't think a lot of people are willing to do that. I think a lot of people will be full adopters,
Yeah.
and they'll go all in. So I do anticipate, we've as Reform guys, we can look back over the last, say, 5 or 6 years and see a series of partings of the way within the Reform world, or even the larger evangelical world. COVID, obviously.
Yeah.
There's that. There's that. There's this debate surrounding natural affections, and the role of, say, something like empathy in ministry, and there are all these things that are kind of wedge matters that are creating new divisions within the larger Christian world. And I think that this is going to be another one. I think there are going to be people who are super enthusiast. I call them cyberheads, and they're just going to be full adopters, and they won't even have a problem linking up their consciousness to the machine. I really do believe that. Then they're going to be what this is Ray Kurzweil's term, and I've adopted it. I'm a proud fundamentalist humanist. That's what he says that people who are resistant to transhumanism, they're fundamentalist humanists. And so I'm like, yep, good, that's me.
Yeah.
But I believe that we will have the same kind of challenges that, say, the old-fashioned fundamentalists had when things were modern. Kind of the modernist project swept through the church. We're already seeing, goofy stuff like, pastors who are creating chat bots to kind of make money and stand in for them, and call my chat bot, and my chat bot's read all my books, and he'll be able to answer your questions.
Did you see the guy? Did you see the guy? It was a clip going around a few months back where he's kind of had a Southern accent, kind of a country twang, and he made this video where he's proud of his chatbot, and he said, "Well, he said, Pastor, would you pray for me?" And then his own voice came back out of his phone, and then he says, "So out of the phone, it says." Something to the effect of, it's like, okay, I've heard your prayer request. Let's pray together. Father, I ask you in the name of Jesus. And he but it was out of his phone praying. And I'm like,
oh yeah.
Like, what does that say about prayer? Prayer is just this magical incantation, these words that are just spoken, but they don't need to come from a human being that knows God.
Yeah, there are a lot of people out there like that guy. And I think we're going to find ourselves really challenged by how to respond to that. There are a number of things that people will accuse us of. So already we're being accused of being homophobes or sexists or whatever. I think we're going to be accused of being Luddites and accused of being against progress or anti-science. We're kind of used to that one already, but I think it's just going to continue. Because I really do believe that many people have a kind of a deep conviction that the progress of technology is a moral imperative, and that it's something that you just don't even question, you don't even think about. You just kind of like get carried along by.
Yeah.
So we're going to need to have some really strong convictions about what it means to be a human being.
For sure. See if this analogy is coming to mind. I've thought before about there are certain technologies that are developed that are morally dubious, but once they are woven into the fabric of everything we do and we come to depend on them, such that backing out would be catastrophic, then we're committed. And so an analogy I would think of is I did not realize that fetal tissue from aborted babies was used in the development of some vaccines. I found that out because of what people were saying during COVID and their objections to it. And then I started to realize, like some of these other vaccines. So we're now dependent on these things, and the strains can then self-perpetuate. You don't need to abort more babies. You can just use the strains that are already in existence. So now this evil thing, and I think Curtis Chang, he made an argument. It's like, it's like this redemptive power of the vaccine that, death or life can come from death. And I'm like, man, that's just so macabre and sick. But I could see technology being that way, to where guys that are like, today in 2025, we have these things that we're concerned about, but whenever the AI, so we have the digital natives or iPhone natives, we'll have like AI transhumanism natives, and it's just going to be the world they live in. So they will accept it as normative, and the thought of going back in time will just be unthinkable. And so there will have to be some new iteration of Christianity that is able to encompass these ways of living that there really is no reverse gear for.
Right.
And that, yeah, these are just reflections that come into my mind as you're
Oh,
talking,
sure,
and
sure, right.
challenges that we're going to face.
Yeah, we're also going to see, and we're already seeing it, kind of an approach to the human body that is strictly instrumentalist and utilitarian, and will think nothing of taking, say, human brain cells and incorporating them into artificial intelligence. It's already happening in parts of Asia. So some of the what's referred to as transformers is these the kind of the hardware and the software working together to learn. There are already companies that are using human brain cells in that.
Hmm. So you mentioned some points of diversion, in the reform world that you would anticipate. Can you think of anything specific where AI use case X is acceptable versus unacceptable that there might be legitimate disagreement about?
Yeah, I think that there will be a range of human enhancement technologies that will just kind of come at us and will challenge us in certain ways. So I think the trend is to go from therapy to enhancement. So as you can see with, say, Elon Musk's Neuralink program, it's all at the moment therapeutic. We have these paraplegics. Isn't it great that now they can operate computers just with their thoughts through a Neuralink? And we're all like, yeah, that's great. And then the next thing is, wouldn't it be great if they had really responsive prosthetics that were, kind of AI enhanced and literally physically linked to the brain, so that a human being would be able to, who was born without legs could have legs and arms and so forth. So like in my church, there's a baby that was born here about a year ago without arms and legs, and I'm thinking, yeah, it would be great for that little guy to have arms and legs someday, and he could get around and function. But what do we do with the person who says, my leg is starting to ache a little bit? I'm just going to have it chopped off. I'm going to get one of those legs. And then we have people who are just sort of like, I want to be able to jump 10 feet, just for fun. I want one of those legs. I want two of those legs. I just want to chop off my legs. I'm going to replace them with these. Now we're in some territory where we're like, hold on, this is not therapeutic. This is pure enhancement. What are you doing to yourself? You're turning yourself into a cyborg of some kind. Like, I don't know if you remember the $6 Million Man, which was with Lee Majors back in the. But anyway, he was the victim of a plane crash. And so they give him this stuff but that makes him a superhero too, because now he can run faster than everybody and all these different things, and people are going to want that. They're already, yeah, RoboCop, but there are already people that are cutting off body parts now to be the opposite sex. Just think about that. If people are willing to do that kind of insanity, what would keep them from this sort of insanity? Not much. So there's going to have to, and I do think this is going to be something as pastors we're going to have to be ready to think about and address.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just one example.
Yeah. So speaking of pastors, as you're a pastor, and now, and so am I. So here's a two-part question. One, like, how would you divide up acceptable and not acceptable uses of AI in pastoral ministry? And second part of that, it would be how can we lead our churches through navigating these waters?
Yeah. Well, in the first part, I think that there are already guys who are using AI, I think in questionable ways, to write their sermons, to do their research, that kind of thing. Getting us back to the idea that whatever you offload to AI, sort of cognitive offloading, you are actually weakening yourself. So it's like someone goes into space and lives without gravity for a while, and initially, wow, isn't this great? I can just float around. Everything is so much easier to do, and so forth. But all the while, your muscles and your bones are atrophying, and you're getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And I think we currently run the risk of creating a kind of idiocracy of the pastorate, where guys are so reliant upon artificial intelligence that they just don't feel a need to learn Greek anymore. They don't feel a need to even read any systematic theology. They just say, you know, uh, and I've actually heard some of these guys say, well, it's going to be more theologically sound if I just let AI write it and I'll just read it. And it's mine because I approve it.
Yeah.
This kind of thing. So right now, I'm an editor at a magazine, Touchstone Magazine. I'm a senior editor there, which means I don't do like the day-to-day editing, but I'm like overseeing the people who do, along with a bunch of other people. And this is a conversation we're having right now. And so I threw this out to them. I said, let's say we had somebody uh, who submitted an article that we initially accept, but then uh, for some reason we become aware that AI had a significant role in writing it. What would you guys do? And they said we would reject it and blacklist that author and never publish anything from that person again. So, and we're not an exception. I'm aware of two other organizations that have come to the same conclusion. So, guys who are in the ministry who become too reliant on artificial intelligence and decide one day, hey, wouldn't it be great if people were reading my stuff and such a magazine or whatever, might discover that they're not capable of actually submitting what's. And if a magazine were to say, yeah, we'll accept anything that AI produces, well, then what do you need the guy for?
Right.
Just let the AI write it for you.
He's
Yeah,
just a name,
that's right. That's right.
like
Save
a
yourself
human
some money.
face. Yeah.
Yeah, save yourself some money. You won't have to pay anybody. Why?
Yeah.
I write and get paid for my writing. Uh,
Hmm.
but what we're going to be doing, I think we're going to see more and more. We're going to see publications, make you sign an affidavit saying I did not use AI in any of these ways. Now they might say, well, it's okay for spell check and things like that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to actually composing, outlining, even helping you make it punchier or whatever, I think that the publishers are going to say off limits. And you remember a few years back when there were a couple of guys who were like uh, taking Tim Keller's sermons and preaching them as their own,
Yeah.
and it came out and those guys got canned. You know, how would your church feel if they learned you, Michael, were actually just letting AI write all your sermons and you just got up and read them? You know,
Yeah.
what would they think? I think that they would rightly think that you were, not doing your job. And
Hmm.
I think anybody. So I think when it comes to this kind of stuff, that's an important thing to think about. Now, when it comes to certain things within ministry, I can understand why maybe just routine sort of administrative emails, maybe between you and your board members or something like that. It's just we're just talking about something equivalent to filling in the blanks, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um, but when it comes to creative work, I don't think that guys should be relying on AI at all.
Yeah. I had a guy call me yesterday out of the blue. I hadn't spoken to him in months, but he was just like, "Hey, I've got a bit of an urgent matter. I needed, the input of another pastor on." And he said that there was he had gotten sick on a Saturday night and asked another guy on his staff, can you fill the pulpit for me tomorrow? So short notice, kind of an emergency situation. And whenever he heard the sermon, he was just like, this has got this has all the marks of AI,
Yeah, yeah,
and it really troubled him.
yeah,
And I was just like, man, and like, you should not have used AI. But I could see, I'm anticipating what he might say. Like, well, it was, I I can't write an entire sermon in 12 hours, if it's a Saturday night, and I would just like be prepared to answer those objections whenever you talk to them.
Yeah.
But I think it's such an easy thing. It's such an easy thing. It's just right there, and the temptation, it's like candy. This
Right.
unlimited knowledge right there. And it used to be Google,
Right.
but you would have to filter through web pages to find the answer you're looking for. But now it's like it synthesizes it all and spits out an answer for you. That I think that will be a very significant issue with pastors, and I'm sure that a lot of guys are going to be pushing for, like, I think this is okay, I think this is acceptable, and we shouldn't have a problem with it. For, as you say, it's more doctrinally sound. The sermon has a symmetry and it alliterates beautifully, much better when I tell chatbot to give it to me in the style of Tim Keller than
That's right.
something I would have come up with on my own.
Right. So I'm 62, and I've got boxes and boxes of sermons. And if someone were to like ask me to preach a sermon at the last minute, I would go into my boxes and say, which one? I've got like 5,000 in here.
Yeah.
So so I'm at a point in my ministry, of course, where I can do that. So, but a lot of the younger guys face the temptation that you just described. This reminds me of something that Wesley said, John Wesley: "Be prepared to preach, pray, or die on a moment's notice." So, the preach part is
Yeah.
but there is an art to extemporaneous preaching. I mean, I've mastered it. I could literally get up, open up a Bible, and preach just as I'm reading the text. Now, it wouldn't be as developed and sort of, reflected on and prayed over the way I think, I want to do, or I want to go through those exercises before I preach. But I could do it. I mean, you could just, if you want it, if you give me like, 2 minutes, I'll read the text, come up with a sermon, and just go.
Yeah. So I want to ask you about how you mentioned the household earlier, and it sounds like you are integrating some of this thinking about AI and technology into your understanding of the household. Which, by the way, your teaching and writing on the household has been very helpful to me, and I know many others as well. And so to see these two topics kind of converge in one individual that I think highly of, I'd love to hear how you would approach dealing with the technology piece in the context of household. And I'm assuming that would be like parents, children, that sort of thing. Like, how would you
Yeah.
approach that?
Yeah, I think it's a pedagogical philosophy that we'll need to encourage parents to employ, and that is basically the old-fashioned understanding that you learn to write by writing, you learn to think by thinking, you learn to play the piano by playing the piano. There are no shortcuts. There is no hack. There's no AI hack to learning these things. You need to do it. And so we'll need to have a strong conviction about the way human beings learn, and that we stick to it. And that means that we're going to provide some really strong boundaries for AI and robotics. So I'm going to be delivering a talk on Friday at New St. Andrews College on this very matter, and I've written a couple of very brief kind of introductions to some short story ideas I have about how families are kind of responding or working with the challenges. And like when Elon Musk is promoting robotics, he talks about, wouldn't it be great to have your own R2D2 and your own C3PO and your own little robot buddy? And I'm like, you know what? No. And so what you want is you want to have the Han Solo mindset, which is, I don't know if you watch like Star Wars closely, Solo has no patience with the droids. He's not interested in being their friends. He's not interested in talking to them. There's that marvelous scene where Chewbacca is on the Millennium Falcon and they're playing some kind of game, and Han says, you're playing a Wookiee, And it's not above a Wookiee's, it's not beyond possibility that the way he will resort to winning is by tearing your arms right off. And then,
Yeah.
C-3PO says to R2-D2, I've got a new strategy. Let the Wookiee win. But I think we need to have that mindset. This is
Hmm.
not something to have a relationship with. This is not even your dog.
Hmm.
This is a machine. There's no one home. There, if you understand how the technology works, it's just basically a very sophisticated calculator. That's all ChatGPT is. There's no consciousness. There's nothing there. It's really good at making you think there's something there, and that's a pretty deceptive thing when you think about it. It's
Yeah.
trying to elicit kind of an emotional bond between you and the thing. So like I've got a number of chat bots, and I'll just interrupt them. I was like, that's it, we're done. And, there's no etiquette. There's no need to have etiquette. I just want the answer. I don't need this. And another thing that chatbots all are designed to do is to keep the conversation flowing because it's all about kind of ongoing and recursive training and all that kind of stuff. So they want you to just not shut up. And they're creating these, you know, porn bots and all this kind of stuff that are all intended to sort of suck you in emotionally and get you kind of connected. So I think that what we're going to need to have. So I envision a world full of robots, domestic robots. They're going to be everywhere. I mean, right now, all the people I listen to are predicting like 1 billion robots in 10 years. They're going to be everywhere, humanoid in character, but other forms as well. And they're going to work really hard at making them cute. I don't know if you saw this one piece from NVIDIA. They've got a little robot that looks like something right out of like Wall-E. It's just like
Mm.
this little cute robot. It's intended to make you feel like it's like a pet or something. But it's recording everything you're doing. It's learning from you. I mean, all this kind of stuff. So it's a plant.
Yeah.
So what you need to have is a mindset with regard to these things where you're like uh, providing some very strong boundaries. And I think if we can use them to reinforce the discipline. So that's one
Hmm.
of the things I have in the short story I wrote is uh, making certain that the robots don't make emotional connections with people, but also reinforce good old-fashioned pedagogy. Like how people actually learn.
Interesting. All right. One final question. You mentioned there's nothing there. There's no actual consciousness. You had said earlier something about AI can learn to act with agency. There
Hmm.
is a creative aspect of it, yet there's no actual consciousness there, although it can simulate it in a illusory way. Um, to me, that sounds like that gray area is something that could be exploited by a demonic power. Am I off my rocker to see AI
No,
and technology as an entry point for influence of the demonic?
I don't think you're, off, off your rocker for thinking that. There have been a lot of other people who have thought about it. So it's something it's a real matter for reflection. One of the things about, um, say, uh, what's going on in artificial intelligence and really on the kind of the bleeding edge of computing is quantum computing and what's going
Mm.
on at the quantum level. So there have been physicists, I think Roger Penrose, for example, famous English physicist, who has hypothesized that human consciousness arises at the quantum level. So if that's the case, if there's some role that the quantum realm has with regard to, human thought and consciousness, then I think it's going to be very easy for people to kind of read into AI a kind of consciousness. My statements regarding artificial intelligence and the simulation of intelligence or the simulation of personality or whatever are not my own. They're basically the people who are kind of when you look at the kind of the world of research when it comes to artificial intelligence, you got basically two groups. Some of the some of the real cutting edge people really do believe it's already conscious. Someone like Jeffrey Hinton. But then there are others who are just as educated and sophisticated, say, nah, it's just all kind of a very sophisticated deception. And I tend to be on that of that opinion as well. But let's say you were like a wine mom. Okay, you know the kind of gal I'm thinking about, right?
Oh, yeah.
She reads the horoscope, she does yoga, she's into crystals. She's going to be just a total sucker for this stuff, and the AI is going to mess with her mind in ways that are just almost impossible to imagine. But she's going to be taken advantage of in some big ways, because there are a lot of people out there who will use AI unethically and will, you know, tell the wine mom to open up her checkbook or whatever, because somebody in Africa is sending her, like a FaceTime message, and it's all artificial intelligence and simulated people and stuff like that. Next thing you know, she's emptying her bank account and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. God help us. Well, Chris, thank you so much for sharing your time with me today, and I look forward to having you here in Cincinnati in about a month.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
And,
yeah,
got a lot to learn.
You got to send me to some place that's better chili than Skyline. So
well, there's Gold Star chili, there's Blue Ash chili, there's Skyline chili. I mean, there's 7 different kinds of chili. It's all Cincinnati chili, though. It's got the sweet, cinnamony kind of flavor, but
yeah, that doesn't bother me. But there was something about that Skyline chili that I got that one time that didn't agree. So.
There's a Waffle House not too far from here as well, so you could go there.
Yeah, man, we don't have them out here in the Pacific Northwest.
All right. Well, that's it for this episode of the Plain Speech Podcast. You can come and hear from Chris Wiley and many of the other speakers that'll be there at the Future Proof Christianity Conference coming up May 8 through 10 in Cincinnati. You can go to futureproofchristianity.com if you would like to find out more information and register. That's it for today. We'll see you next time.